Good morning, second graders. Today is Tuesday, April 14th. You should all have your distance learning second bag with you at home if your parents went to get that yesterday. If they haven't yet, they need to call the office so that they can make arrangements to go get this distance learning bag. It's really important that all of your parents have picked up the materials. I'm going to look at the matrix here. And yesterday on my video, I showed you how the matrix is a little different now. It actually has dates on it each day. So instead of being able to just choose anything from the must-do column, you have to follow the matrix this time and go across according to the date. So we are on Tuesday, April 14th, okay? So it says, watch my video, which you're doing. Good job again. And we're going to start reading a chapter book today. Okay, and so once we've done that on the video, you'll already have your must-do column for reading done. And then for math, we're going to do math at the end of our reading part of the video. So keep watching through the whole thing, and the math will be done at the end of our reading. So today, we are going to be reading this book. And it's the very first book in the Magic Treehouse series. It's called Dinosaurs Before Dark by Mary Pope Osborne. Now, in your distance learning materials, you all had a folder with a math packet and a reading packet. The reading packet actually won't be used until next week because we're going to do a different book next week. Now, the book didn't come with your materials because it didn't come on time, so we'll get that delivered in a few days when it comes. But that's okay. We didn't need that book this week because we're going to start with this book instead. So the next book that you're getting is a Magic Treehouse book also, but there was a lot of background that we needed to know about in order to understand that book. So we thought as second grade teachers that it would be fun to start with the first Magic Treehouse book so that you can understand about the characters and all the things that go on in the book because they all kind of connect together. So just like we do in school, we're going to look at the cover and we're going to see that there are two people on the cover. These are the two main characters in our book. So this boy's name is Jack and this girl's name is Annie. And some of you have already read Magic Treehouse books, and that's okay. You can still enjoy it even if you've read this particular book. I see that Jack is sitting on some type of a dinosaur, which makes sense because the title is called Dinosaurs Before Dark. We're going to read the back of the book, the blurb on the back, just like we do when we start a new book at school. And it says, "Where did the treehouse come from?" Before Jack and Annie can find out, the mysterious treehouse whisks them back to prehistoric past. Now they have to figure out how to get home. Can they do it before dark, or will they become a dinosaur's dinner? And that's a really good question. Where did the treehouse come from? That's something that we're going to find out as we read the story, because obviously the series is called Magic Treehouse. So the treehouse plays an important part in our story. Now, as we've talked about in school, good readers ask questions while they read. They ask questions before they read, during their reading, and after their reading. So I want you to see if you might have any questions right now that you can think about before we start the story. I'm going to open up the book while you're thinking of those questions, and we're going to read the chapters together so that you can follow along. So come up with a good question and see if you can think of that in your head, and maybe it'll get answered while we read the story. Before we start reading, I want to show you the table of contents inside this book. And so you can see that there are 10 chapters in this first Magic Treehouse book. We're going to be reading 3 chapters today, and we're going to be doing some more tomorrow, and then we'll hopefully finish the book on Thursday. So here we go. Go ahead and follow along as we read. Chapter 1 is called Into the Woods. "Help! A monster!" said Annie. "Yeah, sure," said Jack. "A real monster in Frog Creek, Pennsylvania." "Run, Jack," said Annie. She ran up the road. Oh, brother, This is what he got for spending time with his 7-year-old sister. Annie loved pretend stuff, but Jack was 8.5. He liked real things. Notice real is italicized. That means you're supposed to pronounce that a little stronger. So that's why I said he liked real things. Watch out, Jack. The monster's coming. Race you. And here's the picture. And like we said before, Jack and Annie are the main characters, and you can see that they're brother and sister. No thanks, said Jack. Annie raced alone into the woods. Jack looked at the sky. The sun was about to set. Come on, Annie, it's time to go home. But Annie had disappeared. Jack waited. No Annie. Annie, he shouted again. Jack, Jack, come here. Jack groaned. This better be good, he said. Jack left the road and headed into the woods. The trees were lit with a golden late afternoon light. Come here, called Annie. There she was, standing under a tall oak tree. Look, she said. She was pointing at a rope ladder. I wonder where that rope ladder leads to. The longest rope ladder Jack had ever seen. Wow, he whispered. The ladder went all the way up to the top of the tree. There, at the top, was a treehouse. How many of you guessed that? It was tucked between two branches. That must be the highest treehouse in the world, said Annie. Who built it? Asked Jack. I've never seen it before. I don't know, but I'm going up, said Annie. No, we don't know who it belongs to, said Jack. Just for a teeny minute, said Annie. She started up the ladder. Annie, come back. She kept climbing. Here's a picture of the treehouse. Jack sighed. Annie, it's almost dark. We have to go home. Annie disappeared inside the treehouse. Annie! Jack waited a moment. He was about to call again when Annie poked her head out of the treehouse window. Books! She shouted. What? It's filled with books. Oh, man, Jack loved books. He pushed his glasses into place. He gripped the sides of the rope ladder, and up he went. Chapter 2, The Monster. Jack crawled through a hole in the treehouse floor. Wow, the treehouse was filled with books. Books everywhere. Very old books with dusty covers. New books with shiny, bright covers. Look, you can see far, far away, said Annie. She was peering out the treehouse window. That means she was looking out it. Jack looked out the window with her. Down below were the tops of the other trees. In the distance, he saw the Frog Creek Library. Remember, they live in Frog Creek, Pennsylvania. So Frog Creek is the name of the town they live in, and their state is Pennsylvania, just like you live in Austin, Minnesota. They could see the elementary school, the park. Annie pointed in the other direction. There's our house, she said. Sure enough, there was their white wooden house with the green porch. Next door was their neighbor's black dog, Henry. He looked very tiny. "Hi, Henry," shouted Annie. "Shh," said Jack. "We're not supposed to be up here." He glanced around the treehouse again. "I wonder who owns all these books," he said. He noticed bookmarks were sticking out of many of them. "I like this one," said Annie. She held up a book with a castle on the cover. "Here's a book about Pennsylvania," said Jack. He turned to the page with the bookmark. "Hey, there's a picture of Frog Creek in here," said Jack. "It's a picture of these woods." "Oh, here's a book for you," said Annie. She held up a book about dinosaurs. A blue silk bookmark was sticking out of it. "Let me see it." Jack set down his backpack and grabbed the book from her. "You look at that one, and I'll look at the one about castles," said Annie. "No, we better not," said Jack. "We don't know who these books belong to." But even as he said this, Jack opened the dinosaur book to where the bookmark was. He couldn't help himself. He turned to a picture of an ancient flying reptile, a pteranodon. He touched the huge bat-like wings. Now that's what the cover of the book had on it, isn't it? This huge flying dinosaur. We learned that that's called a pteranodon. "Wow," whispered Jack. "I wish I could see a pteranodon for real." Jack studied the picture of the odd-looking creature soaring through the sky. "Ah!" screamed Annie. "What?" said Jack. "A monster!" Annie cried. She pointed to the treehouse window. "Stop pretending, Annie," said Jack. "No, really," said Annie. Jack looked out the window. A giant creature was gliding above the treetops. He had a long, weird crest on the back of his head, a skinny beak, and huge bat-like wings. It was a real, live pteranodon. The creature curved through the sky. He was coming straight toward the treehouse. He looked like a glider plane. The wind began to blow. I wonder what's going to happen next. Are you asking yourself that question? The leaves trembled. Suddenly, the creature soared up, high into the sky. Jack nearly fell out of the window, trying to see it. The wind picked up. It was whistling now. The treehouse started to spin. "What's happening?" cried Jack. "Get down!" shouted Annie. I'll show you the pictures. There they are, looking out of the treehouse. And there's the flying dinosaur. She pulled him back from the window. The treehouse was spinning, faster and faster. Jack squeezed his eyes shut. He held on to Annie. Then everything was still, absolutely still. Jack opened his eyes. Sunlight slanted through the window. There was Annie. The books, his backpack. The treehouse was still high up in an oak tree. But it wasn't the same oak tree. Chapter 3, Where is Here? Jack looked out the window. He looked down at the picture in the book. He looked back out the window. The world outside and the world in the picture, they were exactly the same. The pteranodon was soaring through the sky. The ground was covered with ferns and tall grass. There was a winding stream, a sloping hill, and volcanoes in the distance. Where are we?" stammered Jack. The pteranodon glided down to the base of their tree. The creature coasted to a stop and stood very still. "What happened to us?" said Annie. She looked at Jack. He looked at her. "I don't know," said Jack. "I was looking at the picture in the book. And you said, 'Wow, I wish I could see a pteranodon for real,'" said Annie. "Yeah, and then we saw one in the Frog Creek woods," said Jack. "Yeah, and then the wind got loud and the treehouse started spinning," said Annie. "And we landed here," said Jack. "And we landed here," said Annie. "So that means," said Jack. "So that means what?" said Annie. "Nothing," said Jack. He shook his head. "None of this can be real." Annie looked out the window again. "But he's real," she said. "He's very real." And there's those italicized words again that you have to stress when you're reading. Jack looked out the window with her. The pteranodon was standing at the base of the oak tree, like a guard. His giant wings were spread out on either side of him. "Hi," Annie shouted. "Shh," said Jack. "We're not supposed to be here." "But where is here?" said Annie. "I don't know," said Jack. "Hi," Annie called again to the creature. The pteranodon looked up at them. "Where is here?" Annie called down. "You're nuts. He can't talk," said Jack. "But maybe the book can tell us." Jack looked down at the book. He read the words under the picture. This flying reptile lived in the Cretaceous period. It vanished 65 million years ago. And there's a picture of Annie coming out of the treehouse. "No, impossible. They couldn't have landed in a time 65 million years ago." "Jack," said Annie, "he's nice." "Nice? Yeah, I can tell. Let's go down and talk to him." "Talk to him?" Annie started down the rope ladder. "Hey!" shouted Jack, but Annie kept going. "Are you crazy?" Jack called. Annie dropped to the ground. She stepped boldly up to the ancient creature. So as I'm thinking about the characters of Jack and Annie, I'm guessing that Annie's pretty bold and Jack kind of is more cautious. He's a little bit more careful. And you can tell that when they interact with this dinosaur, can't you? Annie wants to run right up to him and Jack kind of says, "Hey, be careful, be careful." All right, and we will start chapter 4 tomorrow. On your matrix, what you need to do, it says for Tuesday, is that we're going to make a prediction in your mind of what you think will happen next. Okay, so Annie just was going to run up to the dinosaur. So what do you think is going to happen next in our story? Just think of it in your mind. And then guess what? You're done with your reading must-do for today. In math, we're going to start lesson 2 that we did in school before we had to come home. And some of you might have done it, and that's okay. We're all going to do it again because it's a nice review. So here we go. Now, I have the colored pages. Most of you have copies of it because some of you did it when we were at school on those last 2 days, and some of you weren't in school those days. So we're just going to start here and make this a review. Okay, so it's called Lesson 2, Make Picture Graphs. And our essential question is, how can I record and analyze data? And so when we were in school still, the very first lesson was on making tally marks. And so that's one way you can record data. And making a picture graph is another way to record data. So we're going to start with our math and our world page. And you know what? If you need to pause the video right now and stop and go get your math packet and a pencil, you feel free to do that so that you can go ahead and start the video once you're ready, and then we'll get our math done for today. So you should be on page 535, right here. And it's lesson 2, make a picture graph. And like I said, yours is going to be copies paper. And that's not going to be the real math page for this lesson. We made copies of it so that everybody would have the same sheet. Okay? All right. So this is our Math in Our World page that we do every day to start with our pages. Whenever we tear out 3 pages, the first page is Math in Our World. Here we go. It's favorite lunch food. Okay, and we have a sandwich, pizza, hot dogs, and soup. Now, the directions say, ask 5 classmates to pick their favorite lunch food. Draw a picture in the chart to show each person's choice. Now, obviously we can't be here to draw sticks, so I'm just going to draw sticks, and I'm going to call out names, and I'm just going to tell you which one you'd pick. And I might be wrong, but that's okay. It'll still be fun. We have to look at the key, and it says each food equals 1 vote. So I'm just going to use circles as my symbols, okay? All right, so let's see. I'm going to choose Courtney first, and I think Courtney would pick a hot dog. So go ahead on your paper with me and put a circle because Courtney would pick a hot dog. And then I'm going to choose Amia. Amia, I'm going to say you'd pick soup. So I'm going to put a circle for soup. And you know what? I'm actually going to ask 10 people because then it'll be more fun and more of you can hear your name. And if you don't get drawn today, I'll draw you another day. And then Adrian. Adrian, I'm going to say you're going to pick a hot dog too. And Easton, I'm going to think Easton would pick pizza. So far we have pizza, hot dogs, and soup that are chosen. Tegan, you're next, and I'm going to say you're going to pick pizza too. Mateo, I think you're a pizza guy too, so I'm going to give you pizza. Manuela, I'm going to say that you're going to pick soup. Nobody's picked a sandwich yet, so the next person I pick is going to pick a sandwich. Oh, it's Corbin. Corbin's going to pick a sandwich. And Kenley, you're going to pick a hot dog. And Kaden, I'm going to have you pick pizza. All right, so as you can see by our picture graph, the most kids chose pizza, and then hot dogs, and then soup, and then sandwich. So I could make a comparison sentence and say, there are 3 more students who chose pizza than sandwiches. Or I could say there are 2 fewer students that chose soup than pizza. Okay, good job. All right, you're going to turn over your paper, and at the top, we're going to go over the guided practice part. And it says, you show data with a picture graph. The pictures are a symbol for the data. And remember, when it's highlighted in yellow, that means it's important vocabulary words. So you know what a picture graph is. That's what we just made on the other side. And there's another one right here about our favorite marble color. And the symbols are the circles that you draw in the picture graph. And it says there's a helpful hint. The key tells how many each symbol stands for. So in this picture graph about favorite marble color, each marble equals 1 vote. So you can see that there was 3 that chose blue marbles, and there was 3 that chose red marbles. Okay, now your assignment today on your matrix says this. Do guided practice number 1 on page 536 of your math packet. Tell a family member your answer to the talk math question. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to do number 1, which is right here, and you are going to turn that tally chart into a picture graph. And you can go ahead, it says each shoe equals 1 vote, but remember we talked about just using a circle for the symbol so that we don't have to spend a lot of time drawing each kind of shoe. Now if you want to draw each kind of shoe, you go right ahead. But if we were in school, Mrs. Lunning would just be drawing circles. And remember, you're going to turn that tally chart into the picture graph. So look at the total up here on the tally chart and then turn it into pictures in your favorite shoes. And then at the bottom, you're going to tell a family member how are picture graphs different from tally charts. And once you've done that, guess what? You are done with your must-dos for reading and for math today. Great job, second grade. You can choose to do any of the may-dos for Tuesday, April 14th, the rest of the day. And join me tomorrow as we watch the video for Wednesday. Hope you have a great day. Bye, second grade.